here you go.
Everybody talks about Edward being heavy math. Edward and I have had several discussions. It is not math, it's just arithmetic. We just take numbers, do addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. There's no math in this stuff. It's all arithmetic. It's straightforward. In some regions it gets complicated, but it's straightforward and there's no real advanced abstracted math in this at all.
Okay. So Ed, come here. So we talk about us. This guy here is all of you. He takes care of his elderly mom. And in the meantime, between other, less, very noble actions, but less enjoyable in some ways, he's crunching away on his computer. In fact, we got you a new computer, didn't we, the other day? So you got something better to work with now. He was working on a prehistoric dinosaur computer, and we got him something newer so that he could work. He's a little bit hard of hearing, so he'll do the talking. We won't have to force him to listen. But Ed, you have done some amazing work pulling these algorithms together and understanding what's going on, that even with all the experts that we've thrown at this stuff, you found things that nobody else found within the way these programs are working in the machines. And he's just a guy, but he's one of the great patriots in this whole thing. His material was presented at the White House the other day and got total respect, okay? So super guy. Ed, come here. One thing I want you to do, he's going to have some needs. We're covering them. Anything, when you give us a handover to unauthorized.1 or other things, or direct to guy like this, you're not helping them forward so much as just backfilling on what they've already put in, okay? We're way deeper than people realize. Ed's one of those guys. You did it all out of your own pocket, your own time, your own mind.
Whatever I could do.
Whatever you could. But you did it.
I did it, man.
Okay,
Yeah.
stuff that world-class experts did not get it. You saw things nobody else did. Ed, thank you so much for coming. He flew out here, he was willing to walk. We said that we don't have time for that. He's got out here. We paid for an actual airplane for him. And I'm going to hand it over to you, bro.
Thank you.
They're yours.
Okay. So, perhaps the most important thing to preface this with is why we shouldn't have computers and technology in our elections to begin with. I'm not a chef. I can't cook a Chateaubriand. I'm not a mechanic. I can't change an axle on a car. How many of you here are computers and programmers? No, right? Well, the general audience, you get what I mean. How many people can do calculus, can do rates of change over time? No. How many law enforcement officers can pull up a cast vote record and analyze it for election fraud? How many judges can understand it? How many lawyers can understand it? This is why we can't have things in our elections that require specialized skill sets in order to understand how the counts get to where they are, because once something goes wrong, it takes an incredibly, what's the correct phrase for this? A very special niche of people to diagnose the problem, and then we have to compress it back down for the general audience. And so the one thing I want to say before we get started is the number one reason to get rid of computers in our elections and then return to hand-counted paper ballots on election day only at a precinct level, 400 or 500 people a precinct, is so we never have to have a conversation like this ever again. All right, now I wrote this article 1 year and 1 day ago, June 16, 2025. I was a bit black-pilled right then during Andy Thompson's case. I said, why Nevadans deserve to have rigged elections. That's how angry I was. Anyway, I'm a little happier today. So, taking the same images from that newspaper article from the Nevada Globe, and we're calling this synchronized election results and LockStep parallel motion. And we're going to be going over Nevada 2024, Colorado 2020, and Maryland 2024. So I want to have Maryland in there because Maryland is done with ES and S, and Nevada and Colorado are done with Dominion. So it's not just one vendor, and they have the exact same graphs you're going to see. So when I show you one or two of these graphs, once you understand it, don't think this is the only place it's ever happened in. Give me the cast vote record of any one of the 50 states in the union of 2020, 2022, 2024, and it's going to happen again in 2026, and you're going to see stuff just like this.
Hey, folks, please keep it down. Ed's speaking.
Yeah, let's keep it down at the back, even though we're getting in line for that stuff. But stop for 1 second. Ed, I want to mention one thing. He just gave you a term that is going to be part of the glossary that you want to have in your armory as we go to battle on this stolen vote. Lockstep parallel motion. You coined that term, I think, didn't you? So think about what that means. They're all in step, parallel in all of these different votes. If you don't get that, you don't understand anything of the rest of what Ed's about to say. Lockstep, parallel motion, okay? So I just want to make sure I emphasize that sticks in your head. You think that's right? You think that's right?
Roger was talking. Okay. All right. So we're going to start. This is the chief exhibit in the case of Andy Thompson versus Secretary of State in Nevada, which we filed in December of 2024. That case is still ongoing because they don't know how to get rid of it. So what's happening in this graph? Well, there's 3 modes of voting. There's an early voting, election day, and mail-in voting. They rig all 3. We're going to deal with the mail-in vote here. And we're looking at roughly 500,000 mail-in ballots, is 443,000. And we're pulling them from the cast vote record, which comes from the Secretary of State's office. So it's not like it's my own data source or it's some PCAP thing. This is, I go to the Clark County Registrar of Voters, I download the cast vote record, and let's say there's 1 million ballots. Row 1 is ballot 1, row 2 is ballot 2, down to row 1 million is ballot 1 million. It's not that complicated. And it shows me every single candidate and proposition selection made on that ballot. That's it. If there's a 1, it means the person filled it in. If there's a 0, it means they didn't fill in that bubble. That's it. Very easy to read. So what happens when I look at the mail-in vote only? Because just so you know, there's technically an early voting that happened that I've taken out of here. There's an election day vote that happens around here that I also took out. So we're only looking at the mail-in votes, all 443,000. I said, I'm going to take I said, what is 3% of this number, 443,000? It's about 13,000. So I chose an arbitrary number, and I said, I'm going to take every consecutive batch of 13,000 ballots. Now I'm going to split them into Trump and Kamala voters. Then I'm going to split them again into how they voted on abortion or as to how they voted on adopting open primaries for future elections, okay? So when I do that, let's say halfway through the election, this would be about 220,000 ballots in. It says that 65% of Trump voters were opposed to state question 3, and that maybe 48% of Kamala voters were opposed to state question 3. And I go, okay, how about the next batch of 13,000 ballots? Let's say it comes down here. And now it's, okay, 58% of Trump voters were opposed and 2% of Kamala voters were opposed. Is there anything wrong with there being a partisan difference between Trump and Kamala voters? No, we actually expect that. That's not the problem here. Wait till you see Arapahoe where there was 0 in Colorado. But anyway, the partisan divide isn't the problem. The problem is that the rate at which they change is identical from one batch of ballots to the next. So look at this in the yellow regions. When Trump voters go up, Kamala voters go up by exactly 0.6 that amount. Then when Trump voters go down in the next batch of 13, Kamala voters went down by 0.6 of that percentage again. And then when Kamala voters went up, Trump voters went up in the yellow. And they go down, down, up, down, down. Like 85% of the ballots, that is 375,000 ballots Almost 500,000 ballots were synthetically engineered. This has nothing to do with human behavior. Then after election day in the gray, is there any more synchronization here? No, it's all gone. They didn't have to rig anything anymore. Synthetically engineered elections, it's worse than rigged. It's completely fake. Now here you see the rates of change. So how do you get this graph? I subtract that peak from this peak, and I do the same thing for the Kamala voters at the same time. So I subtract the distance from peak to peak. Can anybody see the difference, other than one being 6/10 the height of the other? See the end, where they're out of sync? That's what a normal election looks like, right at the tail end. All right, we'll go to the next slide, Roger. I get very, I want to like knock people out sometimes if I talk about this.
Keep going, Ed.
All right.
Keep going, it's good.
Ed, you be loud, man. You be loud.
All right. All right, so here's Arapahoe County. We'll probably we'll do Mesa County more later tonight for Tina Peters. But this is Arapahoe County, Colorado. This is the 2020 general election. Did the same thing. So in El Paso County, there's a 30–40% difference between how Democrats and Republicans wanted to raise their taxes or not, which you would expect. Except in Arapahoe, there's no difference between Trump and Biden voters. Blue is how Biden voters voted on the repeal of Gallagher, which resulted in like the tripling of property taxes, by the way. And then the red is the Trump voters. Can anybody see the difference between every consecutive batch of 10,000 ballots? So what I did here, and Roger does these, we'll take these cast vote records and we'll shuffle them millions of times. This is what an ordinary election would look like if the ballots just came in the mail at random the way they're supposed to. That's what it's supposed to look like. Does that look like that?
Oh.
So the beauty of this synchronization, which the original term I used was LockStep parallel motion. Roger, go to the previous slide, the original. So the reason I got that more crazy term was because they're moving in lockstep. The lines are parallel, even if they are something called a linear thing. And it's in motion because it's happening over time. But the word that Mark Cook used, I actually like, is synchronized election results, because the rates of change are synchronized, and it's impossible. There's no controversy. There's no theory you can come up with that says how this could happen in a fair election. And this is why the Nevada Secretary of State has been running away from Andy Thompson now for over a year and a half. We haven't even had a merits hearing. Because who wants to have a merits hearing on that? It's over. All right. So this is Arapahoe, and this was the second exhibit we entered into the Nevada case. And initially, they didn't want to admit it because they said, well, this isn't from Nevada. Why are you giving us something from Colorado? Why? Because it's the same vendor, Dominion Voting Systems. It's also a historical example, which is technically neutral, because that's from the state of Colorado. Now, what happened 5 years later after we entered that into the court record? Go to the next slide, Roger. Here it is again, the same graph you just saw for Colorado. Trump and Biden voters doing the same thing. Maybe the ballot window is a bit bigger than 10,000, that picture. And they said, oh, well, let's go change the cast vote record half a decade later without telling the judge, without telling the plaintiff, Andy Thompson, without telling the analyst, Edward Solomon, under oath for penalty of perjury. Let's just tamper with evidence across state lines without telling anybody.
Same file name, same file name, same everything, same file name.
Yes, exactly. Same file name, same version number. Trump voters became the yellow line, and Biden voters became the green line, and they're no longer synchronizing their rates of change. Now I caught them by accident. Lady Draza asked me to help her in a Supreme Court case. There's something going on in Maryland. And I said, I want to make sure I have this proper for the Supreme Court justices. Let me make sure that nobody tampered with that data. Then I caught them, whole shebang. I called the FBI. The next thing you know, Arapahoe County was putting out apology statements for why they changed a cast vote record half a decade later without telling anybody. So you put two and two together. What's the most important thing? Because I know there's a little mathematical controversy about Arapahoe in particular that I don't want to get into today. And it's, let's just assume for the sake of the argument that the excuse Arapahoe County gave is correct, for the sake of it being correct. There's no point even discussing what that was. They still proved with the new cast vote record that lockstep parallel motion can't happen naturally. So then why is it still in the Nevada elections in 2024? Why is it in North Star Bureau, Alaska, for the 2025 election? Why is it in Fulton County, Georgia in 2020, 2022, and 2024? Well, in fact, why is it everywhere I look in any cast vote record that I ever get my hands on? It's not hard to find. It's very easy to figure out which ones and how they're going to rig it. It's not like I'm coming to a predetermined conclusion. I just graph the data as it is from the states, from the Secretary of State. All right, Raj, let's go to the next one. All right, so here's another one. How about, is this early? Yeah, that's the early vote, and that's election day. So here it is again. We're looking at abortion. We're looking at Trump voters only for the moment in red. So this is Clark County 2024. Do you want to have third trimester abortions or not? That's basically what the amendment was. So it says that in the early vote in both Clark County and Washoe County, that 70% of Trump voters were opposed. Exactly 70.00 in both counties. And then between the second part of the mail-in vote, we get to the election day vote. This is the election day. It says we went from 70%, which is more than 2-to-1 opposed, to 52% opposed to late-term abortion amongst Trump voters only. Because Kamala voters are down here at only 8% in both counties. Why would Trump voters go from a near 3-to-1 ratio against late-term abortions from early voting to a near 1-to-1 ratio on election day? Does that make sense to anybody here?
No.
It's not the voters.
Now let's look at Kamala. We're going to get there. Let's look at the Kamala voters. I come from New York. I know a lot of Democrats. And you know what? Doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. I don't know anybody in my personal life that endorses a late-term abortion. Their own polls, fake news, their own polls will show you that the partisan difference on this doesn't bear, I don't think it even exists at the third trimester. You're telling me that 92% of Democrats who voted for Kamala want late-term abortions? And some people go, well, maybe it's the wording of the bill. You know, they use, all their crazy euphemisms for it. Okay, well, I can go look at Colorado 2020, where it was explicitly written to ban late-term abortions, and you got the exact same result if you split it by Trump and Biden. Doesn't hold. Now let's go back to one more previous, so we get to the human thing. One more back. So this type of behavior, ordinary humans that are criminals, rigging an election and stuffing ballots, they cannot create this pattern. If I told everybody here, I want you to stuff ballots to this predetermined outcome at the end, I guarantee you're not ever going to, not in a million years would any of us create this pattern, even if we were trying to rig it. This can only be done by a computer. And now I want you to know how it happens. How did this happen? Because I can split this into congressional districts. I can show you Trump voters in District 1 moving in synchrony with Kamala voters in District 4 in Clark County, okay? How does this happen? Do they act on all these subgroups at once? No, it's a very dumb algorithm. So there's another line in the middle you're not seeing here, and it's the overall yes to no ratio, regardless if you voted for Trump or for Kamala or where you live. And what they were doing was flipping no to yes on abortion or no to yes on state question 3, regardless of how you voted for president, regardless of where you lived. And that makes everybody do the same dance at the same time. It's mathematically forcing. Flipping votes, not deleting, not inserting, flipping with the computer. It's the only way to recreate that pattern. Now, on that, I was going to say something about out as well. We even know the direction in which it's flipped, okay? How do we know that? Because if I divide the height of the red line by the height of the blue line at any moment in time, the ratio actually remains a flat constant. So I know the flip is no to yes, because if the flip was from yes to no, and I divided the height of the red line going to the top by the height of the blue line going to the top, it's not constant. So we even know the direction of the flip. So when they say, oh, well, ballot flipping occurred, but maybe you don't know who it's for, Mr. Solomon, case is, actually, I do know who. I know exactly who they flipped them for. This is what happens when, anybody here play a video game called Half-Life years ago? No, I see a few people. There was, the opening chapter was called Unforeseen Consequences. And it was about a bunch of geeks and computer scientists and particle physicists that thought they were smart enough to open portals to other dimensions, and all they did was accidentally open the gates to hell in a resonance cascade. That is your resonance cascade right there. They didn't even mean to do that. That is an unforeseen consequence of their own rig. Why did it take so long to find something like this? Well, believe it or not, nobody wrote a textbook on algorithmic election fraud. Yeah, so I mean, you know, you want to go to, yeah, I should. I actually have hundreds of paid, thousands. But, you know, if you want to be a counterterrorism agent and you're already in law enforcement, you can go find some, you know, interns and whatever, and you'll find how to do it. You want to go prosecute white-collar crime? There's plenty of internships and courses on that. You want to be a chef? There's a course on that. You want to be a mechanic? Is there any course on election fraud? No. So this is why it took so long to find these, because if you just looked at yes versus no on abortion without splitting into Trump and Biden voters, you're never going to see anything. It actually looks like a fair election. If you just look at Kamala versus Trump and nothing else, it looks like a fair election. I can't tell you what's wrong with it. But once you split it into 4 or more groups that can't overlap, Trump yes, Trump no, Biden yes, or yes and no on a proposition, that reveals how rigged every election is across the United States. It's that easy. All right, let's see what else we have time for. All right, so here's early voting. This is state question 3 for open primaries for Clark County, and down here is Washoe. So in Washoe, there's no synchronization here. I actually think this is authentic. It says that roughly 80% of Trump voters were opposed to open primaries, and 40% of Kamala voters were opposed. Let's take a look at Clark County, right where we are now. Does anybody see LockStep parallel motion at the beginning and the end? All right, so they're rigging the early vote. How about Election Day? This is interesting. Why would Trump voters go from 72% opposed, which again is 3-1, to only 49% opposed in the Election Day vote? Again, how about down here in Washoe, same thing, 80% down to 56%. How about Kamala voters? They went from something in the 40s to down to 26.00 in both counties.
The number of ballots.
Yeah.
Tell them the number of ballots.
20, what?
Tell them the number of ballots.
Oh, yeah. Okay, these are hundreds of thousands of ballots, guys. Again, this is 90,000 ballots for the early vote of Washoe. This is 371,000 ballots for the early vote of Clark. This is 175,000 ballots for the Election Day vote of Clark County. This is 89,000, 90,000 ballots for the Election Day vote of Washoe. We're talking the entire election, early Election Day and mail-in. So, you know, even though they have these huge changes that are synchronized between the counties, why aren't we seeing that synchronicity like we see in the mail-in vote? Well, it's not because we had a fair election, okay? The reason is because it's a very different type of portion of the cast vote record. So when you get the mail-in vote, it comes in from random precincts, random places all over the county, all at once into boxes and just goes in. No rhyme or reason. When you get to early voting or Election Day voting, they come in by the precinct, okay? So that synchronicity is no longer there because you're not getting a time flow. You're actually getting a space flow. And yes, I'm talking about space time. We're almost getting there. Okay, but we'll save that for later. All right, let's go to the next one. So this is the stadium picture. Very simple. So, you know, as you already saw, I say all the Trump voters stand up for the early vote. There's no Kamala voters in the stadium. If you're opposed to abortion, raise a red sign. All right, it's 5-1 opposed to abortion. The green people with the green signs want it, okay? Then I go to the election day vote. I say, everybody, only Trump voters, no Kamala voters, hold up your signs if you're opposed to abortion. Does that picture look like that picture? That's what it means to go from a 5-1 ratio to a 1-1 ratio with numbers with that many ballots. It is incomprehensible. And it happens in every precinct, every congressional district, every state Senate district. It happens in 2 different counties on opposite sides of the state. Clark and Washoe. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so here's Okaloosa. Now, we could talk about how they front-loaded it for Kamala in 2024. This is Matt Gaetz's district. But I want to focus on what's at least good about this election. And do you notice how the percentage of Trump voters opposed to abortion never changes in red the whole way? Even the moving share doesn't change. There's no drop from 80% to 50% in that picture. That's what a normal election looks like. If I take 10,000 Trump voters, they should poll no differently than the next 10,000 Trump voters. End of story. End of discussion. All right, let's go to the next one. Maryland. So we're looking at Frederick County, or are we looking at Congressional District 6? Frederick County, okay. Every county in Maryland looks like this, what you're about to see in 2024. And even every congressional district when I put the cast vote records together in a certain way. But we'll just stick with the county since that's the original source of the data by county. And what we're looking at here is Hogan, who was like a never-Trumper over here, and then the Republican over here is Neil Perot or Neil Parrott or something, Parrott. He pretty much polled the same as Trump, so I wish I had a Trump one, but I'd have to find that another day. The point is, whether we're dealing with a never-Trumper or an actual MAGA Republican, it says that going with the MAGA guy, that 75% of the Republicans there were against abortion in the first mail-in vote and the early vote. But then in the election day vote, it came down to 60%. And then in the final mail-in vote, it came down to 48%. So you're just seeing this in Nevada, and now you're seeing this in Maryland, that Trump voters are randomly falling over time as to how they're opposed to late-term and post-birth abortion. How about Kamala voters? Oh, look, same thing, only 5% want to save babies and 95% magically want to kill them. I don't believe that because I don't know anybody that is in support of it. But we get the same pattern. How about Hogan? Okay, he's a never-Trumper. Okay, well, it says that 63% of Hogan voters were against abortion in the first mail-in vote and the early vote. And then it fell down to 45% in the election day vote. And then it fell down to 37. That's only 1 to 2. It's backwards now. And the second mail-in vote. And this is every county in Maryland. Every county. So if I were to put every county, superimpose them, you would get almost the exact same shape. All the counties are synchronized with the exact same pattern across every congressional district and county. So it's lockstep parallel motion if I were to stagger the graphs out in 3 dimensions.
Because they're all counted on the same machine.
Yeah, right. They're all counted on the same software. Let's go to the next one. Skip that. I don't have time for text right now. All right, we have 85. Okay, so this is on a logarithmic scale, but I converted to percentages for everybody, so I don't have to, because even I can't convert into my head, all right? All right, so once again, we're looking at 387,000 ballots. This is El Paso County 2024 in Colorado, biggest red county in Colorado. I said, well, Maryland and Nevada had this constantly descending ratio of opposition for Trump voters to abortion. How about Colorado? They had it on the ballot, right? We went from 85%, which is 6-1 opposed, down to 66%, which is only 2-1. Again, it's another threefold decrease in opposition on abortion amongst Trump voters only. Because the Kamala voters, they're all the way down there. I can't even find them, okay? I'm only looking at Trump voters. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so here's 2020. Go back right there. So here's, again, that repeal Gallagher, the thing that like tripled everybody's property taxes in Colorado. This is 2020. We're looking at, again, at El Paso County, so we're 4 years back from the last picture. And it says that in this supposedly really heavy Republican county that Trump only started with 35% of the vote, and this is like, it doesn't matter what precinct you look at, and then he somehow skyrockets to 65, 70% of the vote. Well, there's no election day voting in there, it's only mail-in, so you tell me. So anyway, what happens? What's the more interesting thing? Let's pretend, for the sake of the argument, that this is authentic, that the purple line, which is Trump going from 40 to 70% of the vote, is authentic, just for the sake of the argument. If the amount of Trump support increased that much over time, what do you think the amount of people overall opposed to raising their taxes would increase with it? Oh, it doesn't. It stays a flat line the whole election. So, as Trump goes from here to here, Trump opposition goes down at the exact rate required to keep overall opposition stuck at the 45%, which is what's safely needed to pass a constitutional amendment to triple everybody's property taxes. Does that happen anywhere else? Let's go to the next one. Same thing, Arapahoe County. Next one. Call this a seesaw. So when there's a lot of Democrats, you don't really have to worry about the Republicans, right? But when the Republican vote becomes really, really heavy, the big fat red kid, he shimmies up the seesaw in order to negate the effect of his vote. Now go back to the previous, to go to the El Paso, back to one more. That's what you're seeing in this picture. The heavier the Republican vote, which is in purple, the more they shimmy down the seesaw to decrease the effect of their vote on the repeal of Gallagher in yellow. Never changing. It's literally a seesaw rig. That's what it is. It's a mathematically perfect and easily derived. No guessing, no statistics, no human behavior involved. I like you, by the way. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, how much time do I have? Okay, let's talk about Harmeet Dillon for a moment, because I have to start swinging that wrecking ball right now. Okay? Okay. So Andy Thompson, I, and Roger, we go to the DOJ. We're like, Harmeet, we have a problem. All these state courts are corrupt. Can you help us? Here's what she says, verbatim. Sorry, we don't have any data, guys. We don't have any data, guys.
So she's saying real quick, Ed, not that they don't have the data, they don't have the data guys to do the analysis?
Yeah, she's saying they don't have anybody that's good at math. That's what she's saying. So I said, Harmeet, if I were to use my math and computer programming skills to hack the pensions and Social Security of everybody who works at the DOJ, something tells me you would find a lot of data guys. All right? So what is this about? I'm not trying to black pill, I'm trying to red pill here, okay? Nobody's gonna wave a magic wand and fix this for us, okay? I'm not here for my health today. Everybody in this room, you're the ones that gotta do it. LockStep parallel motion, was it that hard to understand? No, it's impossible, okay? If Trump had a magic wand, he would have waved it already, okay? If Harmeet Dillon was actually want to do her job, she would have done it already.
We volunteered. We
Yeah.
volunteered.
Exactly. I've been on a 6-year death march.
I'll do your data guy.
Right. We are the data guys, Harmeet Dillon. That's what I wanted to say. So what I'm trying to say is that, I'm pretty sure everybody in this room is actually on my level when it comes to that. But if you have other people who are like, they know the elections are rigged, you got to start telling them, hey, you got to get part of the movement too. Okay. Like, this is ridiculous. And the only way we win this is if we shift the Overton window. The law's on our side. The facts are on our side. I mean, you can't even refute any of these things. The problem is that there's like an inertia of some sort by the institutions themselves. And it's not just because they benefit from this. It goes back to what I started this presentation with, is not everybody is an expert at math and computer programming, okay? All right, let's go to the next slide because I forgot what I was trying to say. All right, so here's a fun one. So here's a precinct level, okay? This is Arapahoe County, and we're looking at Trump's share of the vote in, it's Arapahoe County 2020. And instead of showing you one line for the whole county, I show you a line for every precinct. All 410 precincts are synchronized going the same direction. Woo! Every precinct. No election day voting, only looking at mail-in voting. Impossible. 410 precincts doing the exact same thing the whole time. Let's go to that. Oh, that happens in Mesa County in Tina Peters, by the way. Exact same graph. So that's still Arapahoe, but just pretend it's Mesa because you get the same picture, okay? Again, this is, so here I'm going by ballot types. So instead of precincts, I'm going by the different ballot styles. So there's less lines. Big 30-degree eigenvector. What happens if I shuffle the cast vote record? Well, it looks like this, like it should in a fair election, all straight lines. That's the difference between rigged and fair. The chance of this happening is a number so large that if I were to start writing it, I could fill every crevice of this entire hotel with zeros, and I would never get finished writing the number of how improbable this is from happening based on shuffle tests that show you how it should look in a fair election. So it's not just like I'm saying, hey, it looks rigged and we all know it's rigged. We can prove with the scientific method that it's rigged. I'm going to take the exact same ballots, the same cast vote record. I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to shuffle them by a random ordering. I'm going to ask, does that pattern remain after it's over? No. I'm going to shuffle that 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Roger does them millions of times because he does it in an actual computer program. I only do it in Excel. And what we do is it's called the 5 sigma rule. 5 sigma means 1 in 3.5 million chance. So in particle physics, if you prove something to a 5 sigma standard, you get a Nobel Prize. All right, this line right here, this is 400 sigma. So me and Roger should be getting, I don't know, dozens of Nobel Prizes for electric work. Okay? That LockStep parallel motion, remember the one where I shuffled it, it was just random noise? Okay, that one we started with in Clark County, that's a 12 sigma event. That's 2 Nobel Prizes. This is what I'm trying to say. It's not hard to prove.
Vexar bond fraud, 50 sigma.
What?
Vexar bond.
Oh, yeah, but when Mitch Vexar with the bond issues, we get 50, 60 sigma. These are numbers that, like I said, they're so large, I could never stop writing the number on the walls. There's no name for these numbers. They're incomprehensible. I call them black hole numbers because if you could even comprehend a fraction of the number, the mass energy density in your head would turn into a black hole. Like, that's how large these numbers are, okay? All right, let's go to the next one.
That was the end.
That's the end. All right, that's good. All right, whatever.
So let me say something.
That number, the number of the tax issue in Bexar County, Texas. The number in the Bexar County, Texas. I ran the shuffles, 4 million shuffles, and it came out with a 50 sigma. I have a little program that converts sigma to probability. It came out infinity. What that means is beyond the floating point number capability of the computer to hold that big a number. The floating point capability of our computers is an IEEE standard thing. It's 10 to the 135. Okay, there's 10 to the 80 protons in the entire universe. 10 to the 135 is just an unimaginable number. And that's what happened in Bexar County tax issues on the ballot.